Hey folks, this is Zach, your friend and realtor in the Bay Area real estate market. I have another market update for you today. Today is Monday, July 14th, 2025. We have the updated inventory numbers on the screen here. So this is an updated inventory table. We also have the numbers from 1 week ago, Monday, July 7th as well. And today we're going to be looking at the trend that occurred over the past week. So if you're new here, if this is your first time watching one of my market updates, let me go ahead and briefly kind of fill you in on what you're seeing on the screen right now. So in the left-hand column, we have, as I mentioned, today's date. We have July 7th, 1 week ago. We also have the different counties that make up the Bay Area. Moving to the next two columns to the right, we have SFH active and we have SFH pending. So SFH stands for single family home. Active, these are going to be the homes that if you were to pull up Zillow or Redfin right now, and just for example, if you were to look for how many single family homes are for sale in Santa Clara County, you would get a result of 1,179. So this is what active means. Pending, these homes are not yet sold. So these homes, the sellers have accepted an offer from a prospective buyer, and 9 out of 10 times within 30 days, these homes will be sold. Moving to the right, we have the active to pending ratio column. Now, this column is, I believe, the most important column, well, one of the most important columns in the market update, along with the active to pending ratio column over here. And what I would say about this column is the lower the number, the more competitive the market. The higher the number, the less competitive the market. So we will dive into that a little bit more in just a moment, but let me go ahead and continue working our way across the table here just to fill in the new viewers about what some of these different fields mean. So moving to the right, two columns, we have C/TH. That stands for condos and townhouses. Again, we have active and we have pending. And then moving to the right, the very last column, we have the active to pending ratio column for condos and townhouses. So coming back to the active to pending ratios, as I mentioned before, the lower the number, the more competitive the market it is. So the lower the number in the ratio column, that's a market favorable to sellers. The higher the number in the ratio column, that's less competitive and more favorable to buyers. Another thing to keep in mind is because you'll see that these ratio numbers range all the way from the lowest number that we have on the screen, 2.3, all the way up to 12.2. So anything that is below five is seller's market territory. That's a pretty hot market. That's a seller's market. Anything in the 5 to 7 range is a pretty balanced market where neither the seller or the buyer has too much leverage. And then anything above 7 is most certainly a buyer's market. That is a market where buyers have more leverage. They have a lot of options to choose from and not much competition amongst themselves. So one thing that we see in a competitive seller's market is we see very low days on market. We see multiple offers and we see sales prices that are generally quite a bit higher than the list price. And now things that we see in a buyer's market, we see longer days on market. We see less offers, sometimes just one offer per property. And we also see, um, let's see, I lost my train of thought there. We mentioned the longer days on market, the less offers. Um, I think another thing to add to that would be in a buyer's market, we definitely see a high amount of inventory. So one of the things that shapes these markets, whether it's a seller's market or a buyer's market, is the amount of inventory. And that's basically what this whole table is about. This is a table that shows inventory by county. Typically, all other things equal, the lower the inventory, the hotter the market, the higher the inventory, the cooler the market. But what you will find out, and we'll go ahead and jump into today's data, is just because there's more inventory doesn't necessarily make it automatically a hot or a seller's market. Because yes, you have to have a high amount of inventory, but you also have to I think I worded that wrong. So what I meant to say was just because you have a low amount of inventory doesn't necessarily indicate that the market is going to be super hot, because with that low inventory, you also have to have the pendings increase, right? So what that means is you have very few options for buyers, but you have lots of buyers out there kind of fighting over all the same homes. That's how we get multiple offer situations. That's how, a single family home in Sunnyvale or Cupertino a year ago was getting 10, 20, 30 plus offers because the inventory was low and the amount of buyers in the market was very high. So, but anyways, without further ado, let's look at the data that we have here on the screen. You can see that we have a lot of blue. Actually, we have all blue this week, minus Santa Cruz condos and townhouses and Contra Costa County condos and townhouses, which I will note that these markets didn't heat up. They actually just stayed the same from the week prior. That's why these numbers are indicated with a green color. If you look 1 week prior, you'll see that the ratio stayed the same. Whenever that happens, I go ahead and use the green color to indicate that there's no change. Anytime that the ratio increases or gets cooler, we note that with a blue color. So you'll see that overall, the Bay Area real estate market cooled off over the past week. If you watched my video last week, though, check it out if you haven't seen it already. But I did predict that this week we were going to see an increase in inventory across all markets and across all property types. That's because last week, July 7th, was just a few days after the holiday, Independence Day, July 4th. So when we have a holiday, most sellers, if they're not in a super big rush and they're working with a listing agent that knows what they're doing, they're not going to put their property on the market for sale during a holiday weekend. Again, I talked about this in the last video, but when you do that, I mean, what's the goal, right? The goal is to get the highest sales price. And the highest sales price is going to come from the highest offer is going to come from multiple offers. Multiple offers stems from lots of interest or activity. So lots of open house activity, buyers agents taking their clients through the property. And that all stems from lots of eyeballs on the property. So in order to get those eyeballs, the interest in the property, you want to aim for a weekend that's not a holiday weekend, because people are out of town. People have family and friends that come in town. So nevertheless, it was pretty easy to predict last week that this week we were going to be seeing, and as you can see here, in single family homes across every county, we had an increase in inventory. Now, if we go over to condos and townhouses, same thing. Across every county, we had an increase in inventory. Santa Cruz County stayed the same, but they didn't lose inventory. Another thing I want to note is the pendings, both single family home and condos and townhouses, all went down this past week. This is not related to the 4th of July holiday, but it is worth noting that single family homes across all counties inventory went up, and across all counties pendings went down. You don't see that too often. That explains why all these numbers are blue over here. Coming over to condos and townhouses, again, like I just mentioned, inventory went up across the board. There was only one county that had an increase in pending sales over the past week. That was Contra Costa County condos and townhouses. And that market didn't even heat up. They just stayed the same. It's because the pendings couldn't keep up with the increase in inventory over the past week. So that's really all I have to say about the market this week, guys. If you're new here, I appreciate you sticking around this long. One thing that I would recommend is go ahead and subscribe. Reason being is because at the end of the month, I do a monthly recap, which is so much more helpful than looking at these weekly trends. Because when you look at these weekly trends, you're so zoomed into the data, you don't really have a good idea what's going on. I mean, look at last week, it was mostly red, and then this week it's mostly blue. So then you think the market is heating up, cooling off. But what's really helpful for you if you are a prospective buyer or a property owner that's considering selling, you'll want to watch my monthly recaps. So April of this year cooled off, May heat up, June cooled off. So let's see what July is going to do. It's a lot better to zoom out and get a high level look at what the Bay Area real estate market is doing. Guys, if you liked the video, if you found it helpful in any way, I'd really appreciate if you could like it, give the thumbs up, share it with somebody that you know is looking to buy or sell real estate in the Bay Area. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Or if you go to the About section in my YouTube, you'll see that my phone number's there, my email's there, my Instagram handle's there. Feel free to reach out if you have any, specific questions, or if you'd like to chat about anything. Other than that, I appreciate your support. Thank you for watching if you made it this far. And then we'll be back in 1 week on July 21st with another Bay Area real estate market update. Until then, thanks, guys. Have a great day. Have a great week. And we'll see you with the next one. Thanks. Take care.